Okay, so according to everybody's watch, we are 5 minutes late. So therefore, let's start. We have what do we have here? We have 8th Sunday after Pentecost. Let me write it down. Okay, we have 8th Sunday after Pentecost, and the text for today would be one of the most fun ones in the whole Old Testament. It's the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel. The book of Ecclesiastes. Even though the book of Ezekiel is fun too. Ecclesiastes 1, and we have... I think it's this one. Yeah? Yes. So we have one of the funniest readings, in the sense that we have one verse and 3 verses and then another group of verses, so they kind of put it together. So that's our Old Testament reading for worship service, but we will start with in the Bible study. And then it's very interesting actually that the gospel reading for today and the Old Testament reading for today, they match really well. So you, in a sense, hopefully you will be blessed. When we will come to the gospel reading, you will know the background for the gospel story, because we'll go through this one. So first I'll talk about the book of Ecclesiastes as a book. The title is Ecclesiastes, and if you have ESV, English Standard Version, which is a standard version for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod for the last few years, it starts like this: the words of the preacher, the son of David, the king in Jerusalem. Okay, so Ecclesiastes is actually preacher. So I understand why they didn't change the title of the book, because they could have said as preacher or preaching, but they decided to leave Ecclesiastes as Ecclesiastes. If you are into church structure or church administration, you have heard probably the ecclesiastical order or ecclesiastical rules and so on. So it's like a church stuff. So the guy who gathers the congregation, okay? So that's the name. So that's him. But in translation, in the first verse, they changed it into preacher. Yes and no. The main thing is kohelet. In Hebrew, it's kohelet. So kohelah is a gathering. So kohelet is the one who addresses the congregation or gathers the congregation. So he is not necessarily a preacher per se. He is the one who brings everybody together. He is the one who invites everybody, and of course he shares. And people come sometimes because they want to hear something from him, or they want to hear some rumors about him from other people. You know, people come to church with a variety of reasons. Okay, we all adults here, we know. So, but the thing is, there are few books in the Bible that are hard to understand. Probably Book of Revelation is one of them, maybe the top number one, or the one that I already mentioned, Ezekiel. It's kind of like a 2 or second part of Daniel when he goes into visions, and it's like, is that what happened? Did he see that? Did he know what's going on? But I would say one of the most grossly misunderstood book is the book of Ecclesiastes. For some reason, especially after Second World War, there was a movement. It's called existentialism If you have heard of that, I can. If you don't, I mean, don't even really worry about that. But I'll spell it. So it's yeah. How do you spell it? Okay. Because I know how to spell it in Russian, but okay, let me actually
Look up in Russian, we'll learn.
We won't grade you.
But I will. I will grade you. I will be back in the end of September. And you guys need to be prepared. Okay, so it's like the word of, the word existence. Okay, that's how it's related, existentialism. So, two main guys, French guys. Okay, what good can come from France? I mean, sorry. But one of them is Albert. Well, Albert, it's not Camus, it's Camus. They don't say anything. I mean, they don't spell right, they don't say right. And Jean-Paul Sartre. Close to the word satire. His life was kind of satiric in some sense. So these guys were like not the only, but one of the prominent and dominant in this teaching. And the idea is, as I said, after Second World War, that the life is meaningless. Okay, and when and what they said is, see, even in the Bible we have it. Vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity, and it's like so on. It's like, and goes on and on and on. And basically, first, when we read the book, in some sense, we kind of, well, yeah. Unfortunately, what I'm going to is Christian, good, evangelical, Lutheran also, Christian theologians picked it up, and it's like, yeah, that's the book about everything being destroyed and there is no meaning and so on and so forth. Okay, if you read the book carefully, and we will have it in the text, yes, in life we have three main gifts. Okay, we have the gift of human relations. Okay, so the gift of humanity, in a sense. We have the gift of material sources, either because we work and labor, we do our laboring stuff, or we can, we work with soil, and, my wife loves, gardening, and, so we have tomatoes right from our backyard. Now, we moved recently, like a little bit more than a year ago, we moved into our house here in Lompoc, so now we have a peach tree. We have peaches right from our back. It's like real cool stuff, Yeah. It's not just a peach even from farmer's market. It's fresher than farmer's market, guys.
And organic.
Seriously, it's super organic, So it's like real thing, you kind of like Garden of Eden. Sweetie, they weren't. Seriously, if we'll jump back, and it is important, I repeat it many, many times, and I will not grow weary to repeat it more times, is if you want to understand the Bible, you need to spend decent time in first 6 chapters of Genesis. If you understand what's going on in first 6 chapters of Genesis, it does mean that you will understand everything, but it will be much easier. It will be a greater help for you to pick up what's going on, even in Ecclesiastes. In English translation, you do not see it. Trust me, I will show you. You will. Okay? So the thing is, in the Garden of Eden, just one flashback from there. They were in the garden. That's why we call kindergarten. We don't say anything. We don't say king forest. It's kindergarten. Why? Because life is easy. I want a plum. Okay, sweetie, here's the plum. Because to make a bread, for example, what do you do to make a bread? You need to sow, you need to reap, then you need to break it, then you need to mix it, then you need to bake it, and you need to mix it in the right proportions. And here's the tip for cooking club. You need to know what kind of mixture you do, because if you don't do right mixture, if you did everything right before and you will attempt to do everything right after, if you do not have a right dough,
It's
it's not going to work. Okay, you did everything right before, you did everything right with the mix, you have a right dough, but you overcooked it. Okay, you're gonna have not a bread, you're gonna have a brick. Really black, hard brick. Nobody gonna eat it. Okay, so to make bread, and leave alone wine in the Bible, okay? Leave alone, that's a different story. With the wine, the main problem is not how you make it, but how you use it. Okay? Okay? And Bible is not against wine. It's really for wine. If you don't believe me, go to Psalms. And it says that's the thing that God gives to kings to give the joy to their hearts. Okay, fine. If we want to be in the kingship of God, that's kind of stuff. But how are you going to use it? That's a different story. So my point is, in the garden, you pick a thing and that's it. Done. It's right there. You just eat it. It's very simple. Okay? So, these coming back, it's kind of like long trip, We took what's that? Detour. Yes. Thank you. Yes, I am ESL. English is the second language. So we took a small detour. Coming back to these guys. These guys said it's all meaningless. Yes, because young men died on the front field, on the battlefields, and when you come back, you kind of try to restore it, but always having this flashback. What if another war will break out? So it's going to be ruined again. And especially the first one, he was born, if I remember correctly, in 1905. So he still remember he had this life. Unlike Sartre was born in 1905, not Camus. He was a little bit younger. So Sartre he still remembered that time between First World War, when they kind of overcame this emotional crisis, but life just started to develop, and you have a second one. So in 50s in France, they lived under philosophical expectation of there is a chance for the third one, and especially if you are France, somewhere in the middle, and US is here, and Soviet Russia is here. So if now not Germany and Soviets will fight, but if American Soviets will start to fight, this guy's going to be caught in the middle. So for them, it made kind of sense. They tried to dive into the Bible, but it is true and not true simultaneously. It is true that life is meaningless if you do not have relationship with God. That's what they never said. They didn't want to deal with that stuff. It's true. If people trust in money, money is a rough, very tough God. It will eat you up. Definitely. Work, yes. Will grow weary. Business will eat people. It eats people up. 100%. Family, even family relationship. If you trust in people, it's great to have. We have 4 kids, and so far, so good. But we've seen other families, and even Christian families. Unfortunately, the relationship with not only parents, but between husband and wife, and their parents. It's not as ideal as we want them. So if we will trust everything into this type of relationship, sooner or later it will betray us. But if we have God as what Jesus said as a cornerstone, then everything else finds its right place. Let's put it this way. Okay? So that's kind of like a general idea of the book, why it is important and good to read. There is one more feature of the book that very often slips from the notice of Christian commentators, is in biblical calendar there are 5 main feasts, important dates. Okay, we have Passover, we have Pentecost, we have it will be soon, like actually in a few days, it's 9 of month of. It's a destruction of notable date that it's not, it's a memorial date, let's put it this way. Destruction of Jerusalem, the first time, by Nebuchadnezzar. And then we have Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, and is together with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And there is Sukkot, or Feast of Tabernacles, or Feast of Booths. Okay? So for each of these 5, let me write them down, because I see you can be confused, and I don't want you to be confused.
Never.
So we have Passover, we have Pentecost, or in Hebrew it's Shavuot. Then we have 9th of Av, or it's a destruction of Jerusalem.
That's not the one in 70 AD though, is it?
It happened actually in the very same day. But
Same day, but not same year.
same year. Yeah, the one that I'm talking about is 586
BC.
BC.
Okay.
Yes, by Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay.
Okay? Though it's good that you brought it up. So, what do we have? 650 years later, same thing happened in the same day. Okay, so now in a synagogue or in a Jewish tradition, it is actually reinforced. And I don't know, I didn't verify the calendar, but they believe that the main persecution that broke out in the Nazi Germany started in the same day. Okay? In I believe 35 or 36, something like that.
Everything you're mentioning goes in the Old Testament. Pentecost, I know New Testament, was that also celebrated in the Old Testament?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, give me a second.
okay.
Not the way we celebrate it, that's why I wrote this name, but yes, give me, so, and then there is a New Year, and that's kind of cool and funny, with Yom Kippur.
Oh.
Okay? So, and when do we celebrate New Year? First month. First day, first month. This is 7th month.
Oh.
Okay? But that's another fun. And then you have a feast of booths. Okay, or tabernacles, small tents, however you want to say it. So that's your Sukkoth, because the sukkah that's your tent. Okay? So for these 5 important memorial days, you have 5 books to read. Okay? Answering your question, if you will go back to Leviticus 23, you will have a calendar for Israelite people when they left Egypt, how they supposed to live. How they supposed to maintain their liturgical life in the face of God. Okay, so the first one would be Shabbat, actually. It says, here are the feasts that you need to fulfill. And the first one is Shabbat, so in our New Testament setting, Most of the churches shifted their paradigm, and now we have Sunday. Okay, instead of Saturday, we have Sunday. But it's still, every week we need to meet with the Lord. Okay, He has a date for us. I mean, take it this way. And it's kind of sweet date, and especially when we have Word and the Sacrament together. So He wants to talk to us, and He wants to feed us. Okay? But then there is a Passover, there is a Pentecost, which would be the giving of the Word. So this is the deliverance, and this is the giving of the Word. Think of that. We come to the church, we confess our sins, and then we have the Word. Okay? So that's the paradigm that we are going through. Okay? That's why when they gathered at the feast of Pentecost at Acts 2 in Jerusalem, it was not an accident that there was a bunch of people. Because they came, it was very prominent and an important feast. It was lots of people from all over the place, from all over the Roman Empire, who believed that the God of Yahweh is the one who needs to be worshipped. So they would come to the temple. Okay? And then the very important one is the Feast of Booths. That's the one we are talking about. My point is, for each of these, there is an appointed reading. Not like the small passage, but the whole book. This is, for Passover, it's Song of Songs. Isn't this a surprise? Okay? Shavuot, or Pentecost, is Book of Ruth. Destruction of Jerusalem, it's definitely Lamentations. For Yom Kippur, I messed up, but that's okay. So there is important reading here, but that's a passage from Genesis 22, and Feast of Booths, we read Ecclesiastes. The thing for the Feast of Booths, how do you do that? You make your own tent, not out of the. That's why I don't like the term tent, because tent, when you think of tent, it's like either steel sticks and kind of fabric over it. You need to make a booth out of the branches, and you are not allowed to fix it while you live in this booth for 7 days. So think of that. You don't do anything, at least you're supposed to, not to work. It's kind of like a small one week vacation. So you sit or drink or eat or sleep in this booth, and you see how wind blows and part of your leaves that you used for your booth go away. Then branches start to fall off, and then you realize, yeah, it's kind of empty because it's going to be ruined. But it opens up your idea that behind this construction that you do, there is a God that you want to talk to. Okay? So without God, it is meaningless, but with God, it is not. And that's what we have in our text. So, done with it. It was a small introduction.
That last one almost seems like commercialism and things that God didn't like when He overturned the tables in the temple. Said we're not going to have a bunch of commercial things going on, buying and selling and all that kind of stuff. But it's different, I guess.
Yes and no. The problem is, let's say you are a very godly worshiper from Rome, but the only place where you can offer sacrifices is Jerusalem. I mean, in Jesus' days and before Jesus' days.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot come to Roman synagogue and do your sacrifices. You can come to Roman synagogue and hear the word, but no sacrifices. Okay, that's important. What do you want to do? You want to come to Jerusalem and do the sacrifice. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to carry the lamb from Rome to Jerusalem
Right.
with a... You can do it, but there is a danger. What if I'm relatively good driver. I have no tickets.
Yeah.
My wife is fine, but she was rear-ended. So what if somebody will rear-end your lamb? It's not going to be kosher. It's not going to be good for the sacrifice. So what you do is you grab a pile of money, you come to Jerusalem, up to the temple, and that's where you buy your normal, already inspected. It's already done. You buy it, your sacrifice is good. The problem is that these guys were in the temple area. That's the problem. So what happened is, in this story, it's a Gospel of John chapter 2, for example, yeah? So because they were in the temple, he drives them out of the temple, not out of, this is, don't do this at all. The point is not don't do this at all, but there is a proper place for everything, and that's what we will find in our text.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because, Jesus was a very practical guy. Seriously, for 30 years he was son of a carpenter. People believe that he was so spiritual, white robes, long hair, kind of nice guy. Okay, yeah. You travel through the desert, your robe, even if it was white in the very beginning, it's not going to be white by the end of the travel. And with long black hairs up to here, under sun, in the desert, it's not practical. At least he should have ponytail or something. I believe he was short here. Okay? Seriously. But if he would be, all of this kind of thing it doesn't work. The guys who made them look this way, they've never been there. They've never thought of that. I've never been there, but I thought of that. I have some friends who live over there. It's kind of hot. So, he was a practical guy. And interesting, just a side thing. If you'll reread the story in Gospel of John chapter 2, after Cana, because it's a transformation of water into wine. However, our free evangelical friends want to do it vice versa. He didn't transform wine into water. Remember it always. He transformed water into wine. Okay, so wine is good. The problem is how you deal with that. How do you use it? But my point is, after that he goes into the temple and he drives away everybody but those who sell doves. Why? Because people who would sell doves would deal mainly with poor people. Okay, if you go into Leviticus, this is one of the most unread books in Lutheran churches, unfortunately. That's what I notice. People don't really read Leviticus. But it is important to read. Because if you read it there, it's like if you want to do real great sacrifice, you offer a calf, okay? Like a real big fat calf. Okay, if you're middle class, kind of like your own business, small thing, little construction company, you do a lamb. But if you are poor, you do doves. Okay, so there are ways to negotiate, there are ways to deal with liturgical rules. So he drives everybody away and he talks to them. Okay, so it is important. So, Ecclesiastes, let us go into the text, what we have here. Okay, I will read verse 1 and 2. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Okay? And this is such a familiar term that it goes even into, if you remember this great book of, oh my goodness, Pilgrim's Progress, sorry. There is a Vanity Fair, okay? Now there is even a magazine, Vanity Fair. So they what he tried to show as a negative thing, they turned into kind of like a thing that to be bragging about. It's like, okay, people are really misminded. Okay, whatever. The thing is, from from my point, this term is overthought. They thought of that too much. Okay? The word in Hebrew is Habel. Habel. Okay, Habel. But what it really means is breathing, breath, or maybe even like you can relate it to clouds. Okay? So the Habelim, that's what it is in Hebrew. That's vanity of vanities. It's kind of Kadosh Kadashim, the holy of holiest. So this is the cloudy of cloudiest thing, or mist. Okay, when we drove here, we kind of went through some mist stuff, and it's very interesting. You know, you go from Lompoc to Arroyo Grande, we went to 1 and then 101. In some areas, it's like real. I mean, you can barely see anything. It's so thick, and then you just go up a few feet, gone. Where's everything? So the point is, what he wants to show is life. Sometimes it's like this clouds stuff, this mist stuff. You go through, and you think you cannot see anything, but just few steps further, you are on a clear spot, and then you can. Okay, now I know how to run my life. Oh, I have so many funny stories about that. You know, if there is a phrase that, you know, you want to have fun in your life, share with God your plans. Okay, so that's what I had. You know, I was so back there in Russia. You know, I knew exactly how to develop, because to make it understandable, in Russia, most of our Lutheran pastors, it is not first or the only career. Okay, so they do jobs and then they are pastors. Okay? Because congregations are small, because the different variety of reasons, you know, and even if the congregations are kind of fine, sometimes they still cannot support it, so it's a different story. So I had my own career. I ended up, before we came here, I was the head of the Department of Health and Environmental Health and Safety Management for a construction company with about 500 plus employees. So I knew exactly, like a whole thing. And then God said, okay, do you want to change? You know? And so we moved here to US. So I dropped everything and we moved here. But so that's the thing. So you come to a clear spot and you think you know what to do, but then you go a little bit down and you are in the mist again. Okay, so it's kind of, that's what he is talking about. One more thing that we do not really see. This is, doesn't sound familiar? Habel. One more time. Habel.
Abel.
Okay? Does it remind you of anybody? Yeah.
Abel.
Yeah.
Okay, so I told you, first 6 chapters of Genesis. This is Genesis 4. Okay? Who was more, I don't want to say important, but who was the main son for Eve? Cain or Abel? Cain. Why? How do we know it? It's right from the Bible. Let's go there.
He's the firstborn.
And what did she say when she conceived him?
I have given me a man.
4:1. Genesis 4:1.
Genesis 4. I have acquired a man from the Lord.
Yep. So she believed that the Messiah that was promised in chapter 3, just a few months ago, that's the guy. And then she also had his brother. Okay, let's have a brother. Let's call him some kind of some cloudy guy. No wonder this cloudy guy ended up being... No. The cloudy guy was not a murderer. The cloudy guy became shepherd. So when you look at the sheep, do they remind you of clouds? Kinda. White, flaky, this kind of stuff. Fluffy, whatever. I mean, whatever words you want to use. Yeah. So he was, in a sense, when you read Ecclesiastes, there are few things you need to think about. One of them is the story of Abel. You can be a good guy, good shepherd, and you will end up dying. Okay? The book is about dying for the Lord's case. Okay? Because he died because his sacrifice was accepted, unlike Cain's. Okay? So one thing. Secondly is again the Feast of Tabernacles or Feast of Booths, where you sit, you kind of do not, you have a time to relax. And you see how everything that you did before starts to fall apart. And unless, this is your another kind of, what would be the word? Another cycle, and you will go into relationship with God again, that it will be meaningless. Okay, you will not repeat it next year. You will not build your next year booth if you do not understand that this is for maintaining relationship with God. Okay, so that's kind of stuff. So the breath and clouds, this kind of Hegel stuff. So let's go further. Verses 12 and 14. We go back to Ecclesiastes, sorry. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. Okay, 2 words about that. The son of David, who was a king in Jerusalem, his name is? Solomon. Correct. Okay. The problem is, some, or most, scholarly commentaries on Ecclesiastes will try to maintain the idea that the book was written much, much later, not by Solomon, but the guy who pretends to be a Solomon. And that's why the name Solomon is not here, because he just kind of like wants to appear to be wise, but this is not Solomon, okay? Okay, guy said, I have been the king over Israel. The problem is that after Solomon, there are only 3 kings over Israel. Okay? Saul, David, and Solomon. There were no other guys who would be a king over Israel. Why? Because after Solomon, the kingdom split it, and you have a northern kingdom, which would be called Israel, but the capital would be in Samaria. Okay, so it is not Israel in Jerusalem. Or you have a south kingdom, which is Judah, and the capital would be in Jerusalem. So the only one guy who can be a son of David and king over Israel in Jerusalem can be Solomon. So that's just for you. My point is, if you will go to, Amazon or a bookstore and pick up a commentary, just be aware, this kind of stuff floats around, and don't worry about that, just get rid of that. So, verse 13, and I applied in my heart to seek and search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. And it is a happy business that God has given to children of man to be busy with. Okay? 2 things. A few things actually. One of them, I applied in my heart. In our modern societies, usually when we hear heart, what do we think? What are we thinking about? We're thinking about emotions, love, of, butterflies. Or, vice versa. I mean, kind of like maybe depression, bad heart, some things in the Bible. Okay, the word lev or levav, which means heart, not necessarily deals with emotions. It is a different worldview of man, different anthropology. Let's put it scientifically. The heart is that's how you make your decisions. However you make your decisions. Some people do it mostly with brain, with some influence of emotions. Some people do it with emotions with some influence of brain. Some people have no brain at all. That's okay. However you do your decisions, you do them out of heart, okay, in the Bible. So he set his inner part, he set his mood, or he set his life career as a pursuit of wisdom. Okay? And that word wisdom is very important because if we know it is a Solomon, what do we know about wisdom from Solomon? The main source of wisdom in Solomonic literature is what? The fear of the Lord. Okay? Let us jump for 1 second into Proverbs. The very first chapter. Again, now we have the name, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. And verse 7 in chapter 1 would be. So, Proverbs 1:7. Okay? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay? And you can translate fear however you want. It can be translated as a real paralyzing terror, can be. But it also can be translated into respect. So I believe we do not need to pick and choose. I think it covers everything. We have biblical characters who were in the presence of God and they were paralyzed. Isaiah. I mean, poor guy. I am a man with unclean lips, out of nation with unclean lips, and I saw the Lord. I mean, he thought he would be, struck dead right there. He was in paralyzing fear. On the other hand, you have guys like Moses who are bargaining with God. Abraham, just the reading from the last week, Genesis 18, about Sodom and Gomorrah. Lord, what if we will have 50 people? Can we handle it a little bit different than not the way you want to do it? And the Lord says, yeah. Okay, what about 45? 40, 30, 20. One more time, 10. Okay? So, I mean, seriously, the guy goes back and forth. We don't really usually do that, but that's in the Bible. These guys were real. It's not that some kind of fairy tales. It's a real life guys. And sometimes, don't we do that? Oh Lord, if I only get A, I will do B, C, D, E. And then you got A, and it's like, I don't want it. I'm not going to do this because I don't want it anymore. So just my point is, if we know Solomon as we know Solomon from the Bible, the beginning of wisdom is a fear of the Lord. Let's reverse it. Is relationship with the Lord. And sometimes it is fearful, sometimes it is respectful, it's very many times it's very loving and tender, and so on and so forth. So, the second part of verse 13, let's come back over here into book of Ecclesiastes, is it is unhappy business that God has given to children of man to be busy with. Okay, what is unhappy business? You can translate it into it is unhappy to just do any business, or this wisdom approach can be very unhappy. And I take the second stand. I believe that's the meaning of the verse. So I try to examine everything with wisdom, and it is unhappy business. Why? The reason is because if you start to see an attempts of people to reach any kind of level without relationship with God, it is unhappy. You see their futile attempts, and you know it's a futile, and you know it's not going to lead anywhere, but you see them doing that. Okay? And sometimes you look back on your life and it's like, why would I do that? Why would I waste my time for this? Instead of, going and growing and something like that. Verse 14. I have seen everything that is done under the sun. And behold, it is Habel, it is vanity. That's the same. And striving after the wind. Okay? We will have this phrase in our reading today a little bit later. Therefore, it is important to understand what he's talking about. The thing is, when we hear striving after wind, it's like it's really useless. But the thing is, in Hebrew, the word ruach means wind, but also another word for breath, but it is another word for spirit. And however you want to spell it, with big S, with capital S, or with small s. Okay? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was formless and void, and the waters covered, and the Spirit of God was hovering over. That's the same word. Okay? So his idea could be, I examined everything which is under the sun, and behold, everything is just a breath, or just a mist. And especially if you try to understand, or you try to reach to this ruach, however you want to translate it. So if you will go after windy ideas, you will end up with meaningless life. If you will go after spirit, your breath will have a meaning. Your breath will have a sense of stuff that you cannot rule, but yet you have this meaning. Okay? No, it's kind of complicated, but that's kind of where he's going. So let's go fast into chapter 2. Verse 18. Chapter 2, verse 18. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Interesting. He is a king who lives in Jerusalem. He is a king over Israel, to whom he should give the results of his labor, to his son. Okay? So the problem with that is he reached the point, and even at his age and stage, he understands that he did not raise his son properly, so whatever he worked for most likely will be led to destruction. And that's what happened. Rehoboam, I mean, if we read First Kings, chapter 12, we see how he wasted the kingdom. Okay? So this is, in some sense, this is abstract, which is applicable to everybody, but on the other hand, it is very personal. It is Solomon who talks about his own hair, the guy who will should follow after him, and he is not sure will he be the wise or he will be a fool. And unfortunately, he acted as a fool. Okay, we know the story. So 20. I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toils of my labor under sun. And I said, why? Okay, and so on and so forth. So we will not go read. So the very 23. For all his days are full of For all his days are full of sorrows, and his work is vexation. Even in the night, his heart does not rest. This also a breath. This also a mist. So don't be caught up with this word vanity. It's a mist. It's unknowing territory. The problem of mist is you kind of see the road, but not really right. Okay? So maybe you need to go there, but maybe you need to at least slow down. Okay? Because maybe there is a car right in front of you, and they were not smart enough to turn on blinkers, and they stopped. Okay? So you need to be cautious. You are on the right way, but you need to be careful. How do you go about that? Okay? Following block, 24 to 28. There is nothing better for a person than he should eat, drink, and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat and who can have enjoyment? Okay? So now we come to the point. Either you have relationship with God, and then you can eat, you can drink, and enjoy the things that you've done in your life, or it's gonna be useless. It's gonna be vanity. Okay? For apart from him, who can eat and have enjoyment? 26. For to the one who pleases with God, with him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to the one who pleases God. This is also vanity and striving after the wind. Okay, so we are again coming to this couple. Okay, this is mist, and this is going after spirit. Okay, so if we have right spirit, if we have right understanding of life, knowing that the foundation for everything is a relationship with God, we can enjoy material possessions and relationship with other humans. And how do we spend our time? Stay blessed. Any questions or comments?